How's it going, guys? It's Mr. Lone Wolf, and today I'm going to go and do a review on this thing, the Calm 317 Sentinel. It's a new scout they've added. I believe it came about joint second in that YouTube poll thing I did. So yeah, we'll send it through its paces and kind of see how it does. I was a bit curious myself. Engine-wise, Azov something or other. It's S on the power, not quite S+, but that's actually pretty decent power-to-weight ratio for a scout. Normally they're sort of on the lower end. Gearbox, I'm going for the freeway just because they tend to be the fastest gearbox, and I kind of find the gearboxes in general are a bit slow on the Scouts. As for the suspension, I'm doing the raised suspension instead of the raised custom. The reason why, I'll show you in a minute, but it can tip a little bit easier with the raised custom, and to be honest, with just the raised, it's got good enough ground clearance anyway for what it is and everything, so yeah, ground clearance isn't really an issue with it. Yeah, so that's why I'm sticking with that. Tyre-wise, it's pretty cool that it's got, because it's a Russian Scout, it's got the muds, and obviously also the chained. I'll be using the muds for a little bit, but I do switch to the chain, because in the end I didn't really find that the muds were that great. Winch-wise, autonomous or advanced, I think I put the advanced on, but obviously you can pick whichever. It's got engageable diffs. Snorkel-wise, it's got two choices. The best one pretty much goes level with the roof. Roof racks and all that. Basically, it's got these two. If you add them all up together, it's got 300 repair points, 4 tyres, and I believe 100 litres of fuel. So it's not quite as good as the Loaf. The Loaf's still got the biggest roof rack dick in the business. But yeah, I mean, it's not too far off. It's not bad. As for the rear bumper, I'm just going to keep the stock one on, I believe it is. Or, oh no, it is the other one. It just sits a little bit higher. So again, ground clearance isn't really an issue though. As for these sort of rooftop add-ons, I've gone for the LED lights and kind of a little bit of a sleeker sun visor thing that doesn't get in the way as much. The front bumpers, to be honest, again, ground clearance isn't really an issue. The stock bumper sits kind of closer to the truck. That one sticks out a little bit more, but it sits a lot higher. And underneath, you can kind of see almost like those little prism bar things that are like an axle protector or whatever. That's kind of angled enough that if you're going to hit anything, it's going to kind of scrape off that and go under your tyres. So, yeah, I personally think that's probably the best one to go with. The miscellaneous thing was just horns and that on the side. Yeah, the rims, there's only two lots. I'm going for those. They've got like a little bit of a fancier pattern to them. And then colour-wise, you've got all the normal ones. That's, I believe, what it is when you buy it, which is kind of the first unique camo coming up. That's what it looks like in black, grey and white. And then yeah, that's like what it was if you don't paint it. That one I like the most, that's what I've got mine painted as. I quite like that one, doesn't look too bad. It's alright, that one, not as keen as like I am with the blue, say, and that one's pretty nice as well. It's sort of an orange and black. And yeah, so we'll go and check it out. Looks wise, I think it looks pretty cool. Sort of reminds me of kind of a Toyota Hilux, that kind of look. It's a little crew cab thing, so I think like the CK1500 for example is just like a two-seater. Inside looks pretty modern. It's got a rear view mirror, actually looks pretty clear. I can see the garage door. That mirror is a little bit small and kind of out of context, but you can see out the back anyway. Got a sunroof as well. On that mirror I can't see my wheels or anything or much of the garage, just best off sticking your head out the window. I can see my tyres, see the garage. And yeah, the horn wise, I think that's actually not bad, to be fair. For a little Scout, it's got enough punch to it. It's wasn't really expecting like a P16 horn. The revs, a bit of a slow rever. Quite a lot of them. I don't really know what difference it makes, but some rev quick, some don't. It gets up to say 3.5 fairly quick, and then now it goes past 4, and it's still going a little bit. I believe it gets to about 4.2, but it takes a little while. I mean, really, it should get up to 5. But it is what it is. Yeah, basically, the reason I put the raised on, not the tuned custom, is like there, drifting, I don't tip. It was a bit of a crap attempt at showing it, but when I drift around, I sit low enough that you drift instead of tip, whereas if I just quickly edit this bit in, this is with the tuned custom. I know I'm going faster here, but I can assure you I did go as fast with both and all the rest of it, and it's not to say it's impossible to tip on the raised, but it's a hell of a lot easier to tip with the tuned custom. It just puts it over to the edge where it's now quite likely to tip after a little drift. Yeah, the trailers, the normal Scout ones, sort of the prototype, fuel, single and double little cargo trailers. I can't stand them, to be honest, so I don't really ever use them. It's pretty fast. Obviously, quite high on the power to weight ratio, but I think part of that, though, is because this thing weighs practically nothing. I would say not only like unrealistically weighs nothing, but yeah, even within the context of the game, it's just so light that it's got no weight to force it into the terrain to bite in and get any grip or anything. So, I mean, I kind of figured it was going to be a little bit slow here. All the scouts are, which is why I drove in a little bit there just to kind of get a bit of footage of, yeah, low range diffs on. It was a little bit wheel spin, but like I said, generally speaking, just about every scout is slow through that. But this was what I was doing, I believe, in the scout videos, kind of cutting off to the right, because part of the advantage of a scout is they're pretty small and you can kind of fit down little narrow like edges of the road where you don't necessarily have to go through the mud. This was a little test to see if it would fit through this gap, because stuff like the Hummer couldn't get through there, the Lodestar can't get through there, obviously the Tatrim won't be able to get through there, although it's questionable really if that's even a scout. I think it's just been put in that category so they can kind of stop it from being a truck and have trailers and all the rest of it. Yeah, but again, I mean, punchy enough. A lot of stuff goes, if you go to the left too far there's like some super mud that slows everything down, even like the dolphin and that gets caught by that little patch. Yeah, as it's a scout though, I'm not going to go kind of off to the right now and down the normal path I do. I'm going to go this way and do a little climb of the mountain, just because I actually think this is a bit of a more realistic test and kind of what I'd want to see really with a scout. Like I said, driving down like muddy roads, I'm not going to use a scout to do that sort of thing generally. Whereas this may well be like up little windy mountain roads, possibly, you know, looking for watchtowers and that on various maps. One thing I noticed while I'm driving up here, I mean, it's got pretty nice turning circle and everything. I put it in high gear. It's a decent enough pace, but it doesn't, like, high normally feels pretty bloody slow in the Scouts, but because this has got decent enough size tyres, I think they're 41 inch, which when you consider some of those newer trucks they've added have got like 46 inch tyres or something, which really ain't far off the size of truck tyres. Yeah, it climbs up that little bit pretty well, and I let it roll back now. Handbrakes, not bad. That's stopping it pretty quick. Some handbrakes, seriously, just like you put them on and they keep rolling for a little bit. But then yeah, I roll backwards down there to see a little bit of stability, and then I kind of go the long way around here. And yeah, because of the lack of weight in it, it just feels like little situations like this, it feels a little bit imprecise. Like it can just start skidding over to the left and right a little bit. As I said, because there's just no weight planting it into the floor, it doesn't feel like the wheels are particularly like got a decent contact with the ground. You almost feel a little bit like you're skating around on ice all the time, and that'll come into effect in a minute. I believe there is a tiny little glitch here, I apologise, but I came back to get a bit more footage anyway, you'll sort of see why. Like now it's skidding over a little bit, and I was just turning but it was too late. It went over that hill, I tried to winch to everything popped out the ground instantly, which I'm surprised because the thing does weigh sod all. Yeah, I came back. Now though, I put chained on it, I was just curious, and I actually think in this scenario the chained did feel, it's not 100% on it because again there's just such a lack of weight, but I do feel like the chained probably halved the skiddy, not planted feeling of it. And I believe though, when you look at the chained, I think they are rated excellent for off-road, whereas obviously the muds I think are just good and they're excellent on mud. So it probably is right. Somebody said the other day, I believe this sort of terrain I'm on now, it's like not really deforming, so I think that counts as off-road, even though like it is, say, mud, but it's just sort of compacted mud, sort of dirt roads. Yeah, so overall, I mean, it did climb up there, the turning circle and all the rest of it. Yeah, the chained made it feel a bit more planted, so not too bad. This was like just a little speed run through the town on, what's it called, Black River. It's basically, because one thing I would possibly use a scout for is for flying across the map to just go and grab a mission or whatever, or, you know, like I said, going to a watchtower. I'm not really going to be doing some major long journeys off-roading, but these things can get a bit of a move on. And yeah, I mean, overall there's a bit of drifting going on, just the nature of the mechanics of the game, sort of stuff drifts like mad when you get up to a high speed. But it was pretty stable with the raised suspension. It wasn't sort of digging in and trying to roll and flip and everything, it was just drifting instead, so not too bad. Those anti-terrorist barricade things did their job there, but they yeah, smashed me up a little bit. And now, again, because there's so little weight planting down, it's quite erratic, and like it's anyone's guess when you apply steering. it doesn't necessarily apply it. Like, you feel like you get a bit of understeer and stuff because there's just, yeah, not a lot of weight on the front to bite into the ground and apply your steering. See, this is what I've never liked with Scouts. So it's ridiculous with this game. Driving on here, I mean, it's a 4x4 vehicle with chains on in a couple of inches of snow, and it couldn't even go faster than 1 or 2 miles an hour down a little hill. Like, I don't know why they punish Scouts so bad in this game when it comes to off-road terrain, especially not that crazy off-road terrain. It always turns into the equivalent of like super snow about now, but for this thing it didn't make that much difference. It's almost like any snow. And again, it's not just this, it did this with the Hummer and all sorts of them, the CK, but yeah, it's just a bit of a joke, because surely, like, the fact that they've released this Scout, somebody there must have drove this thing in snow, and how they didn't come to the conclusion, like, yeah, that's pretty bad, that an off-road raised suspension specifically customised to be an off-road vehicle Scout can't even go more than 2 miles an hour in an inch of snow. It couldn't actually get over that second barrier, which I was quite surprised at, because it's got fairly decent sized tyres and had the chain on. I needed a little help from the... It got over the first barrier, but yeah, that one's like the second barrier test that's a bit taller. And yeah, it wasn't liking it. The loaf flew over that one, for example, by comparison. See, up here again, I mean, this is like a super snow section, to be fair, but there certainly isn't a lot of speed on the go, so low range with the diffs on. And bits like this, funnily enough, you notice the lighter the vehicle, the worse it is. These trees, I was going a little bit to the right of that bush, that one that's sort of in between those trees, because that bush is a beast. But yeah, I mean, look at it, because there's just such lack of weight, I can barely bend and force that tree to the ground without it essentially lifting me off the floor a little bit, to the point where I've sort of lost even more grip. So yeah, in the end, I had to go and winch to a tree over here. Of course, I'm looking ahead of me, I start my winch, and it starts it off, I don't know, somewhere over there in the trees. Seems logical. But you see there, it didn't rip that tree out of the floor, because this thing just weighs nothing. So a bit of slow going over there, and yeah. I mean, I don't want to purposely just pile it all on this, because as I said, it's just a problem with the Scouts in general that it's weird. Like I said, even the gearboxes go slower than the truck gearboxes, and realistically, a vehicle like this in real life is going to go a lot faster than the Dolphin, because this thing is going to be geared as like a normal car. It's going to go a good 100 mile an hour. It's doubtful the Dolphin's going to do 100 mile an hour in real life. But I don't know why they're so punished. I mean, you can't deliver cargo with them and that, so it makes sense to be the one thing they're good at is flying across, you know, reasonable off-road terrain to scout things, collect missions, whatever, and then obviously you send in the trucks to do the missions. Long story short, I did cut a bit out because there's a lot of, like, I was just trying to keep the video a bit shorter, but I drove at the pipes, it just bounces off them, it could not bump its way up there, so I could slowly drive up the pipes and get my front wheels to like near the wall, so I stuck a winch from the back of the truck to that tree, did that trick, got myself over. Cutting that out, I mean, again, look at just how painfully slow it is. This tree test was kind of a bit irrelevant anyway, it sort of sits low enough that, like I said, that was more of a test for the trucks really, but I believe I did put it in 1 or 2 of the other Scout videos, and I was just, for the sakes of curiosity, thought I'd check it out. It was so slow that normally I drive up the mountain after that, coming out the trees there, but I was just like, oh hell no. I ain't sitting here and watching it slowly crawl up that mountain for 2 minutes. I'm on my way now, obviously not really doing a cargo test, because there's no point, but as I was flying along here, it's quite nice with its drifting. Again, there's still a little bit of understeer going on, so, like there for example, it would have been nice if it bit in a little bit sooner, but for the most part it's pretty stable. See there again though, just understeer, it didn't kick in time. But yeah, I remember doing sort of the rally tests down here and everything, yeah, this thing's ticking along quite nicely. I believe a little bit faster than sort of like the CK 1500 was going down there. And this is basically why I don't do a cargo test. If I had a trailer now, I'd just get stuck instantly. I remember doing it on some of the other reviews, and I just disconnected the trailer now. And the next time I'd come back here, there'd be a bloody trailer sat in the way. So, let's just save us all the time. I didn't use the winch there, but I connected it to see if I got a little like grip bonus or a boost of any, because sometimes you do, just for attaching a winch to something, anything. You don't have to actually, yeah, like hoover the winch in, but it does give you like a little boost sometimes. And long story short, I think I would get over here, but I mean, again, are we all in agreement that this is a little bit excessive for an off-road vehicle in, I don't know, 6 inches of mud? So yeah, eventually I was like, sod it. Winch. I think I've figured out everything I need to know. I mean, literally, what we are doing like 1 or 2 miles an hour. Obviously, turning circle wise, it's pretty decent on the turning circle. Most of the scouts are, to be fair, but yeah, there's never really going to be any issues going around there. Cut ahead because it took me about 5 minutes from where I was to get to here. Water test, I suppose, like it goes from shallow to deep there, and that's why it all goes very, very slow again. And then it sort of goes back to shallow about now. And then it goes back up to a reasonable speed. I mean, enough that I'd be happy ticking along at this speed. I'm in high gear, so I was never going to go like absolutely flying anyway, but... So they must have hit a little patch of sort of slightly deeper water there, because it slowed right down again. And if you get on these actual snowy track bits, you can kind of maintain a bit of speed. And going through here, there's never going to be any issue. It's yeah, pretty narrow. But then as soon as you're into like where it's just snow, it's like, right, save. I actually had to drive, so I don't know, about 4.5 years. I was early 30s when I started this video, but I think I'm like mid to late 30s now. For the interior kind of tests, that little tree in front of me, kind of above the steering wheel. Apologies, there seems to be a couple of little tiny sort of half-second glitches. Yeah, sort of the view over the bonnet and all the rest of it is just fine. You sit high enough. Just having a little look around and out the place. Yeah, but view-wise, it's decent. Now again, I am going to cut ahead a bit because it just goes incredibly slow for the next few minutes there. Onto this, sort of crossing this little rock bridge thing. So, I bumped off there, a little bit further to the right than I would have liked, but again, it's not like him climbing up things. And I think part of that is again to do with the weight, where even when you're climbing over like those barriers, you still need a bit of weight in the truck to kind of, once it bites on the edge of the barrier, a bit of weight to kind of force the, say, those chains once they've bitten on to actually stay dug in and all the rest of it. But yeah, just because this thing weighs about as much as an empty crisp packet, it was seriously struggling there. Considering it has got 41-inch tyre, the loaf flies up there, and that's got 8-inch smaller tyres. Well, it got up that second bit, yeah, pretty decently. I mean, again, the water might be sort of making things a little bit more difficult. Maybe if that was just a complete set of dry rocks, it might have fared a little bit better. And then going up here, as you'll see, not only it goes slow enough now, but then that dug in. I didn't mean to turn like that. It just, once the front right wheel caught the snow, it flung round. And I was like, yeah, I'm not driving all the way to the other side of that snowy section, because that literally will be like 8 minutes of pure squeezing the throttle and watching not a lot happen. Sorry, what was it? The Devil's Mud section, which is easily like super mud / death mud. At least in this situation, they've kept it to one place where it's clearly been a heavily driven, like absolutely ripped to pieces swampy area. So at least this kind of makes quite a lot of sense in the game. It's not just mindlessly been put all over the place. Yeah, not very good through that mud, but I didn't really expect it to be. None of the other scouts do particularly well through there. To be fair, a lot of the trucks don't like that place either. So, on the mountain, you can see I brought a Voron Grad with me just to drag this thing through that muddy section. On that little bump I just went over was the Hummer got caught there, like beached. So this thing, even with the middle suspension, still's got quite a lot of ground clearance. Tipping wise, doesn't really feel an issue. It's, I wouldn't say it's weighted crazy low or anything. Like, again, there's just such little weight that There's practically nothing to try and carry you over. See, look, the back weighs so little, like one little tap there and the whole back end just flicks up in the air. Nose test, pretty decent. Those front tyres are pretty close to the front of the truck, and yeah, again, it does sit nice and high, so that was not too bad. I was going to say, at least once you get to the top of these mountains, it doesn't, the snow calms down a lot. You can actually normally, like little bits like this where you dip down, it doesn't, but all these sort of solid mountain tops, they drive quite nicely. Yeah, that's like the secondary nose test. Again, if it's past the first one, it doesn't really matter about the second one. That's sort of a second chance for some of the ones that don't do too well on the first nose test. And then yeah, slowly crawl our way to the roller test. It's funny because after like driving this around tonight, the loaf, goddamn, feels like a Formula 1 car now by comparison. Double roll. But once it landed on its wheels there, it kind of, again, what little weight there is, appears to be sort of lower down than it is higher up, so it's not too bad. Reversing now, and I could hear the revs sounded a bit higher, so I'll go into the interior, because I wanted to look like, do I get more revs? I'm in reverse, like low range diffs on, where it lets me have the diffs. Put it in the low range and go forward, and it does drop the revs from about, I was on about 1600 I reckon in reverse, and it probably dropped down to 1400. So yeah, go in reverse everywhere. But again, just because it's a low range gear, why is it cock blocking me of like nearly 4,000 of my revs? Well, it already cock blocks you 1,000, it only revs up to 4.2, so why is it denying me 3,000 revs? I should still be able to rev up to 4.2 in low range. So yeah, climbing up here. I believe all the other scouts have made it up here. You hear how it keeps sort of getting little lunges of power, and then it dies right back down to where I'm barely above tick over. And I mean, it got up there, again I apologise, a tiny little glitch there. It did get up eventually, but it had to crab its way over to the left kind of like more than some of the others. And I do think that is back to the weight again, where there's just nothing to it that's planting it into the ground in order to bite in better and kind of help it climb up. So even though there is like a lot of power there, yeah, the power to weight. If this thing weighed the same amount as a loaf, it'd be interesting to see how much that power to weight would drop by. And that's not too bad there. There's certainly some that could have dropped, but this thing, see how like, because it was understeering and skidding a bit, it doesn't stay very planted. It started skidding over to the left, and that was it. Like, I just slid off the peak and rolled. Landed on its wheels again, so it was pretty good. And then a little slow climb up here. Again, the other day I did like the Zix up here, but that had the muds, so it could only make it as far as those big hefty tyre tracks you could see. The what was the truck called? The Brigadier, that made it up in chain. This thing on the slow side, but it got it, and then I'm just checking like the beaching side of things. There's a pretty sharp little peak there, and it made its way over. Next we're in Quarry. I didn't want to bother driving through that mud. I brought a Zix with me and dragged this thing down here, because yeah, we've already seen it in mud. It'd be horrifically slow and I'd end up winching out of there. I already know it. Motoring along there pretty nicely. It was fairly stable. I was decent enough, like I could sort of aim it where I wanted. Again, the steering, as far as it getting grip and kicking in, is a little on the slow side, but still manageable. And alright, I'm sorry there's a glitch there, but I don't know why, just as I was rolling down there, it started cocking the back wheel up, because it weighs so little, and then it started tipping to the side. By comparison, look, the loaf just planted, because it has weight to it. Like, honestly, there's wind socks that weigh more than this thing. Job's a good one. And yeah, what I did, I really don't like that Scout 2 slot cargo thing. I'd rather tow one of these around. I'm not adding a concrete slab into it though, because I remember doing it in some of the other tests. It won't stand a chance of getting up here if it had a concrete slab packed in there. Or if, or even worse, if it was on the what do you call it? Yeah, on that like Scout 2-slot flatbed thing. Now for comparison, I believe the CK was probably similar, struggling a little bit to get it up here. The Loaf can get it up there pretty good. That's what she said. Yeah, and then so that's kind of where we're at as a sort of benchmark compared to the muzzles. I don't think I did it, like when I did the Loaf review, I was still bringing like the Scout flatbed then, and it was just horrible because it dug in, and yeah, I since then learned like that's just such a crap trailer that I said, I think in the Loaf review, I'd rather winch one of these behind me, and then in the end on the next reviews I was like, well, yeah, that's a good point, I will winch one of these behind me. So it can make it, but barely by the skin of its teeth. What I have to keep doing is sort of that, like, little bits where I just disconnect the winch, drive forward a bit more. And eventually, very slowly, I probably edited 3 or 4 minutes out of there, I got it to the top of this second quarry hill. So this was a test going up this third quarry hill. It's already going slow, but you just never know, the grip could just stay. And again, I already know I could have swapped it over to the muds or whatever, but as somebody said to me that when I was doing the Zix, this apparently counts as off-road, not mud. I'm not sure because it's kind of deforms the terrain, but I don't know. But yeah, the chain are rated as excellent on dirt, so they in theory should have had the best chance they're going to have. Yeah, it couldn't handle it, it couldn't get that trailer up there, but it could drive itself up. So that's better than nothing, I suppose, but for comparison, there's a goddamn horse of a vehicle. You have to know these things. Any excuse to drive a Loaf and I'm up for it. Right now I was like, that's a bit weird to be honest, because I happen to know that the Loaf can drive this trailer up there, but and then at this point it's the rock under, like, just to the right corner of me. Yeah, there. I need to move over to the left. I wasn't really paying attention now, to be honest. I was just kind of squeezing the throttle. I was talking to the cat, messing around, and then that's why I edited. It's only about 10 seconds out there. But once I sort of looked back at the TV and realised I was just stuck doing that, I moved over to the left a little bit, and yeah, there you go. So just for a comparison of like what can it and can't it do. No real surprise to anyone, but yeah, it ain't beating the Loaf. Can it climb up here? Because that's... Yep, that's not bad. Some of them certainly can't do that. A jump off there, I mean, it had like about did a front flip, but it sort of landed, and then it rolled. But yeah, it made it to its wheels. Might have been a little bit of luck, but nonetheless, yeah, Loaf has no problem getting up there, and of course we're sending him off. Bam, lands it like a pro. Probably stubbed his cock on the floor, but that's what you get when you're hung like a Loaf horse. And he's off. And I mean, like I said, I was like, god damn, this thing is rapid now by comparison. A little bit of two-wheel action because he can jump off there. And he made it. Can he go for the triple? Nice little roly-poly, and he lands it. Goddamn horse. Yeah, there's no point in towing the trailer down with me, because once I get to this point it'll just roll down of its own accord behind me. It's not really going to make much difference. Got some pretty good speed, but I couldn't really steer where I wanted to, so I kind of flew off near that trailer. Look how stupidly slow it is on that mud. And again, I'm going to put it like a little bit down to luck, because it just so happens to basically get to the bottom as it makes it to its wheels, but nonetheless, near enough every time I've rolled it, it's made it back to its wheels. So like I said, after a while you've got to sort of be like, it's not just coincidence, because the trucks that are bad for rolling never get that level of coincidence and luck. Like, they pretty quickly end up on their roof. This thing did keep making it back to its wheels, so it's certainly not bad for it. See, to me though, this thing should walk up here. Like, the fact that it's got pretty decent sized tyres for a Scout. But again, listen to the revs or lack of. Like, I'm barely over tick over. But it did get up there. So, next up, and I was like, this better get over the ice. Because, yeah, since this thing weighs about as much as an exhaled breath, then, yeah. And, unsurprisingly, it does. It just doesn't break the ice. It weighs subtle. It doesn't even need like the big fat chunky tyres like the Cairn Marshall's got, or obviously like the Tiger custom mud things and all sorts. And in the end, instead of just a couple of goes of crossing it, and then if they make it that far, we sort of just drive straight down here, which is all breakable along here. I could, in theory, go through at any second, but yeah, there's just nothing to it. So I suppose in that sense, like when I did the Northern Aegis installation exploration video the other day, and I took the Yar to get over that death ice bit, I suppose this is one thing. Maybe that's why they've added it for the latest, yeah, maps. Like this thing can get over ice. Smack that. It did Jeff Special though, which is pretty cool. And then yeah, hit that ice, and that soon changed my mind. So, crossing over this bit on the flooded foothills. See me Scout there. Again, that Scout is pure, it's a stock Scout, I believe, and I dotted, you'll see on a lot of maps, I've just got one vehicle that's abandoned somewhere, and it's just purely that when they update the game, if they go missing or not, you can see the back basically floating now, and now the front's floating. So that's it, I'm not touching the floor with anything now. So it kind of makes you think, why do they add a snorkel that goes all the way to the roof when the thing floats? Eventually though, I kind of know if I keep aiming that way, the current will sort of carry me down, but hopefully a little bit diagonally. Yeah, eventually got to a point where I could touch the floor again and actually crawl my way out there, so not amazing, I certainly wouldn't be taking it. I mean, it's one of those things with these tests, like, even with the mods, I don't use many Scouts because I just don't need them. Like, the Loaf is a goddamn beast, and I take that everywhere with me because he's just like the perfect little sidekick to whatever I'm up to. But yeah, other than that, there's not really much use to the Scouts in this game. They've kind of just, well, I wouldn't say ruined them, they never made them to an unruined point in the first place. They're just not that good. Except the Loaf, his goddamn horse or vehicle, and get yourself a Loaf. Go down here, I mean, again, the thing's got pretty good speed. Take it out of all-wheel drive, stick it in high for the old Jeff Special, which it does, and there's a couple of Scouts that do the Jeff Special, but it's certainly in the minority, so it's pretty cool. Took quite a lot of damage there. Landed on my side. What I did find quite interesting though, it floats so severely that when I tipped, as soon as the wheel touched the water, it couldn't sink anymore, so it rolled me back to my wheels. And then yeah, I had another go with a roof rack and that on, just to see, and it didn't really slow me down. I mean, maybe a couple of miles an hour, but not as bad as some of the roof racks, like broke trucks. Yeah, and then this is the Cat CT681, I just wanted to get it flipped. Overshot it a bit, but fired a winch out, I think we got it, but it didn't work, it didn't quite flip it back to its wheels. I just wanted to also check, like, once I've added the roof rack and everything, does it add weight to the vehicle and maybe make it be able to go a little bit deeper in the water, or possibly even not float? Yeah, I mean, long story short, no. It doesn't really do a lot of anything. I'm basically stuck now because, yeah, I'm just floating to the point. I've not got really any contact on the ground. Coming back for another little Jeff Special, as you do. And then, yeah, look, it floats so insane. It's not even the tyres that make it float, because they're barely even touching the water. Well, 3 out of 4 of them aren't touching the water. It's just, yeah, it weighs nothing. Send in the goddamn professional. Look at him go. What a beast. Lands it, has a little roll, but it's never really in doubt. He makes it to his wheels. And I will say, if I jumped that Sentinel thing off there about 5 times, I don't think I once landed on my wheel. Oh no, I did, sorry, when I tipped. And it floated so bad it kind of made me fall on my wheels instead of falling in the water sideways. Other than that, yeah, I wasn't able to land it on its wheels. I mean, yeah, it's no issue obviously pulling out of here because it's just there's no weight, no real resistance to it. So I fixed it up with the loaf. This just, I edited this in, you'll see why in a second. I just put it in a bit earlier in the video, climbing up this mountain. We'll be back to the cliff in a minute, but yeah, extremely slow. I edited like 8/10 of this out because again it would have took probably 5 minutes of footage for me to just get up the whole mountain. See, again, not amazing with the grips. I've got the chain on. Normally the chain will just carry on up that rock face, but I've had to move over to the left. This snow patch here, if you're struggling, you sort of move over to that and it helps a little bit. But it's seriously on the edge, and again I don't get why the more grip you lose, the revs just vanish. Once I got the first wheel sort of hooked over the peak of that mountain, I could kind of snake my way along. So yeah, we're just about by the skin of its teeth. It made it there. There's no point in going down the other side of the mountain to ram that tree, because not in a million goddamn years is it going to break that tree. I mean, look, even how slow it is through the snow is just insane. A bit of a tank slapper flying down there. It's quite a good little crash though. And I didn't make it to my wheels, but I'm tipped enough where I was able to start the engine, but I just recovered to the garage anyway. Yeah, I mean, possibly one of the most important tests of the lot. The Flying Dolphin test. It's been a while since I've had to do one of these. I was a little bit rusty, I'm not going to lie. Well, that first one was obviously just to recalibrate where my dolphin's landing. Like, well, I did hit it with the back. That's not bad. It was a good start. I checked out, I did damage the fuel and the suspension. Sent in the loaf cut, he was down there already. Fixed him up, went for another one. Oh man, that's the one I would have wanted. A full-on headbutt. Landed on it though, flipped me back to my wheels, which was pretty nice. I edited one or two of these out as well. It's took me quite a few attempts. And that one, yeah, oh, god damn it. It barely even landed. Recover. Next. I nailed it hard enough that it's literally stuck. It's like morphed into my truck, but it fell out there. So we have to just try another one. Hit the back again, but I think I nailed it pretty good there. It was like full on head first. Smashed it. Nailed, what was it? Tyres and the suspension again this time. And it's so keen on floating. I was trying to winch to things to get it to level out. And when it does, yeah, I mean you can see it's not touching the floor, it's completely floating, nowhere near like the top of the snorkel or anything like that. So yeah, for water crossing, not amazing. And yeah, I mean that's about it for the review. In conclusion, I mean it's got its moments. I think I own 3 or 4 of them, but to be honest, it was because I couldn't be arsed finding where I'd left the first one, so I bought another one, and then I couldn't remember where I left that, so I went and bought another one. And then I found out I'd already bought another one as well. So yeah, I mean, it's pretty quick. Flying down roads and that, it's not too bad. It's pretty stable for how quick it can go and all the rest of it. Money-wise, is about 68 grand fully upgraded, which ain't cheap. That one I believe was 74 as well, with all the roof rack and everything on. Scrolling down, I mean, look, if the menu scrolls quicker when you go through loafs. I can't even make this stuff up. That is a true story. Yeah, looking at the prices of different things. Obviously, the loafs almost half the price, even when that's fully upgraded. A lot of the vehicles are cheaper. To put it in comparison, this thing here is 70 grand, and I would much rather drive the Lodestar than this Sentinel, to be honest. The Lodestar's got enough weight to it, it's got the truck gearbox, which is quite nice, and a truck engine. Yeah, it can pull trailers enough, it goes fast. There it is, 40 grand, which, like you can see on the right, the loaf, it's nearly 4 times the cost of a loaf or the Don. Still twice as much as the Cairn Marshall. There's a little description there which says at the bottom it's like surprisingly good on terrain. It's like yeah, in slow motion it is. That's about it. Yeah, so in conclusion, like I said, maybe grab yourself one. It's something new, but don't expect it to be like the new king of the map or anything, because it just really isn't. But anyway, that's about it for today though. I hope you enjoyed, I hope that helps. Thanks for watching, thanks for my Patreon members. Get yourself a loaf because it's still the best, and I'll be back soon.